Hey, Slater Crusaders, my name is Mike Slater, filling in for the great Buck Sexton today. Got two incredible guests. First, a woman in Finland is on trial for quoting a Bible verse. She's on trial for committing a war crime for quoting Romans. I kid you not. Also, a black teacher blowing the whistle on critical race theory at her school, appalled at what she sees. We're going to talk to her as well, all coming up on Hold the Line. So by now, you know the whole Joe Rogan controversy, right? He had Dr. Malone on a show, who's one of the first developers of the mRNA vaccine, and he's against the latest mRNA vaccines, which of course is a cult, which means Joe Rogan had an anti-vaccine heretic on the show, a devil worshiper, and we therefore must burn not only Dr. Malone at the stake, but also all the other fellow heretics who dare give him a platform like Joe Rogan. You know the whole story by now. I got 3 points I want to make for you here. The third point is, do you really believe in freedom of speech? I'm going to challenge you on that. Second point, what does it take to silence you? The first point I want to make is, it's all meant to silence you. Don't be distracted by Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's just the latest target, right? First it was Alex Jones, then it was the President of the United States of America, and now it happens to be Joe Rogan, and then it's everyone here on the first. And it's all an attack on you. This whole story, though, brings up a really good point about the latest smear attempt, and that's the word misinformation. So first point, it's all done to silence you. Second point, what will it take to silence you? Now, back in the day, and by that I mean like last month, the attempt to silence you was by calling everything you say hate speech. Right? So what you're saying is hate speech, it's violent, it's causing me trauma. Also, silence was violent, so it was a weird trick they put you in, but it was hate speech. That was the term, right? Now that's a very low bar, hate speech. That's enough to silence and censor and cancel someone, is they're saying hate speech, very low bar. But what they're attempting now is an even lower bar to cancel you, and that is merely misinformation. That's the experiment that the left is running right now. Can they cancel you with merely accusing you of spreading misinformation? That's all it takes to get someone canceled. That's what they're testing. Here's Joe Rogan's response to this whole thing.
The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact. Like, for instance, 8 months ago, if you said, if you get vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and you can still spread COVID, you would be removed from social media. They would ban you from certain platforms. Now, that's accepted as fact. If you said, I don't think cloth masks work, you would be banned from social media. Now, that's openly and repeatedly stated on CNN. If you said, I think it's possible that COVID-19 came from a lab, you'd be banned from many social media platforms. Now that's on the cover of Newsweek. All of those theories that at one point in time were banned were openly discussed by those two men that I had on my podcast that have been accused of dangerous misinformation.
Of course that's true. And on my show, we've given countless examples, debunking the experts and their studies countless times. They themselves spreading misinformation. Now, the reason this became a story is because Neil Young said he was going to pull his music from Spotify if they keep Joe Rogan. Okay, 2 things about Neil Young. First of all, his most recent tour in 2006, I kid you not, was called the Freedom of Speech Tour. You kidding me? The Freedom of Speech Tour. And here he is against freedom. Also, Neil Young, in this last decade or so, he's been on this big anti-GMO food crusade. Indeed, spreading misinformation about GMO food. So we must cancel Neil Young for spreading misinformation. But not only Neil Young, we also have to cancel everyone who gave him a platform to spread misinformation, including Stephen Colbert and anyone else who's ever interviewed him. Now, there's a bunch of other aging rock stars who have said they're pulling their music from Spotify as well. One of them is Joni Mitchell, who has Morgellons disease. Have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of Morgellons disease? Here's the Wikipedia definition of Morgellons disease. The informal name of a scientifically unsubstantiated skin condition in which individuals have sores that they believe contain fibrous material. Morgellons is not well understood, but the general medical consensus is that it's a form of delusional parasitosis. Parasitosis is when you think you have bugs or worms or other creatures inside of your body. Some people think they have string inside of their skin that's causing them all these problems, okay? Now, if you think you have Morgellons disease, it's a mental illness, right? Now, I'm not mocking her in any way for having a mental illness, right? My point is, she has been spreading misinformation about this disease that doesn't exist. So if this is the bar that we're setting, that if you spread misinformation, you're gone, let's apply it evenly. Let's apply it to everyone, because all of these people are spreading misinformation. And it ties in with the Karen Johnson story. Whoopi Goldberg, I don't use stage names. Karen Johnson's running. Right, she said some really dumb things about the Holocaust, that the Nazis weren't racist or whatever, right? She was obviously wrong, spreading misinformation. Of course, what she said was way worse than anything Joe Rogan or his guests have ever spread. Okay, so first point, all this is done to silence you. Second point, what will it take to silence you? Will you be silenced merely with the accusation of you're spreading misinformation? Third point, do you really believe in freedom of speech? I'm going to challenge you on this. All right? We're conservatives, right? We want everyone to speak as much as possible. I'm a free speech extremist. I want everyone to speak all the time. I want to know where you stand on an issue so I can respond accordingly. I'm on a free speech jihad, okay? But I want to know how, and real quick on Whoopi, we rebuked Whoopi for what she said. It never crossed my mind to fire her. I assumed The View is just 1 hour of women saying stupid things. So like, whatever, this is just like par for the course. Getting fired never crossed my mind. But if you think you're also a freedom of speech extremist, I want to challenge you here. These are two professors. One's SUNY Fredonia, it's near Buffalo, New York, and then another guy at Occidental College in Los Angeles. This is mostly the guy from LA who speaks here.
Still the adult child sex. That's always a big seller.
Oh yeah. Well, that
I had good friends who said, "Are you crazy? Do not write that book."
Man, listen, you're talking to a guy who for 25 years has been making arguments more or less in defense of adult child sex in classrooms. And I don't know if it's the same argument as yours, but I even authored a piece in the Daily Beast in which I called into question the age of consent laws. Which is, and I brought to bear the arguments I was making in class, and I'm going to see whether they jibe. Right.
Because this seemed to be like a paradigm case. There's actually some meta studies which seem to suggest that in some cases, at least with regard to adult males and underage males, that it's not harmful, or if it is harmful, we can't decide whether the harm is due to the sex itself or the fact that society goes berserk over it.
Jeez. Let me play one more clip of these perverts. So he goes on and says that girls are designed by evolution, which is a really interesting turn of phrase. My special on here on the 1st on Saturday, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern, is about Genesis, the book of Genesis, and we talk about creation and evolution. And it's funny for an evolutionist to talk about design, because evolutionists believe that there is no such thing as design. So anyway, here is this guy talking about how if girls were designed by evolution to be reproductive, to be able to reproduce under 18, then therefore they should be allowed to have sex with adults under the age of 18. Here's what he said.
One of the articles I was reading said, look, this is wrong. We don't need to know whether it's harmful. The empirical question of whether or not there's any long-term harm we could track on this is really beside the point. And I was kind of struck with the question. I thought, well, it's not obvious to me why that is. Right? I mean, the standard kind of other argument is that it's a right infringement. And I wasn't sort of convinced by that argument. And also when it comes to hebephilia rather than sort of adult child sex, so sex with like young teens, it's not clear to me. I mean, look, there's at least some reason to believe that that individuals are, designed by evolution to begin reproduction at that period. So if they're designed by evolution to begin reproduction, it's not clear why it would be physically either harmful or emotionally harmful. And so there was kind of like 3 different explanations, none of which convinced me.
Okay. So the question is, do these two perverts have the right to say what they just said right there? And if you believe so, you're a free speech extremist. If you don't believe so, then you need to be able to articulately define why not, why that crossed a line. But if you think they have the right to say that, which I do, you're an extremist. Great. We will roundly rebuke their vile, disgusting comments. That's what we do. We believe in freedom of speech. Coming up next, a grandmother in Finland arrested for war crimes for quoting the Bible. It's in Finland, but it's coming here next. We'll talk with the lawyers representing her next on Buck Sexton's Hold the Line. Hey, Mike Slater filling in for the great Buck Sexton. So we were just talking about freedom of speech, if you're a freedom of speech extremist or not, but we're heading in absolutely the wrong direction in America. We've said for a long time now that it's just a matter of time before they use the hate speech attack, and now even maybe the misinformation attack against Christians. And they're going to go after churches, they're going to go after pastors speaking from pulpits, they're going to go after the tax-exempt status of churches, and they're going to go after you for being a bigot and for hate crimes. I'm certain. And it's happening right now as we speak in Finland. Sean Nelson is here. He's the legal counselor for global religious freedom of ADF International. Sean, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Mike.
Tell us about this woman in Finland that you guys are representing.
Yeah, well, you laid it out really well what the stakes are. This is free speech on trial. This is a case that never should have been brought. The case we're talking about involves a woman who is a Finnish member of parliament. Her name's PAIVI RASANEN. She is a grandmother. She's very popular in Finland, the nicest person you'll ever meet. She also happens to be a Christian. Well, her church is the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland. Back in 2019, she saw that her church had sponsored the Helsinki Pride Parade. Now, Ms. Rosanen, she is a traditional believer in marriage and human sexuality. And so she was disappointed with this. And like many people do, they take to social media to raise questions about what their church leaders, what about their other leaders are doing. And so she tweeted out, she said, raised a very simple question to her church. She said, I saw that you had sponsored this Pride Parade this year. Do you think that that really accords with church doctrine and with the Bible? And then she tweeted a picture of the Bible, of Romans. And that's it. That's the only thing that she did. Because she did such a simple thing as tweeted at her own church about why they joined a pride parade, she just expressed herself very simply like anybody else should be able to. This opened up a legal odyssey for her that would span until now over the next 2-3 years. So first, the police started investigating her. They came after her. I don't know what there is to investigate. It's a tweet. The tweet's actually still up. You can go look at it right now on Twitter. I did that just before this. And they actually cleared her. They said there's nothing illegal here. But the Finnish prosecutor, who is a very progressive person, she has made combating so-called hate speech one of her major priorities. She said, that's not enough. I want to go back through and look at every single thing she said over her last 20 some odd years of being a very public, prominent figure. So they went back, they found only 2 other things, a radio show where she was very friendly and respectful from earlier in the year, and a pamphlet published in 2004 that is directed to her co-religionists, other Christians, just about what Christianity teaches on marriage and human sexuality. For that, she's being prosecuted with up to 2 years in prison or fines for criminal hate speech. It's actually called ethnic agitation in the Finnish criminal code. And the publisher of that 2004 pamphlet, Bishop Johanna Pohjola, he is being prosecuted for this same thing as well. It is astonishing how far they are going.
It's unbelievable. So I'm like dizzy from that. This is like, the whole week it's been the Joe Rogan, Neil Young, Spotify, controversy free, whatever. This is that to the next level, right? We're talking not just getting canceled, but thrown in jail. And we're talking about, Spotify, are they a platform or a publisher? And here's this woman's, it was like her pastor or priest or something who was in charge of the publication, right? Now he's getting arrested?
Absolutely, and you're right. This is like the Joe Rogan episode times 10. And it's very similar with the bishop. Are people responsible for what other people say, even when they're just asking questions, when they're just presenting information? That's what journalists do. That's what the church does, right? The church talks to people. That's what anybody does. You know, you talk to your friend. Are people going to overhear your conversations if you share that on Facebook now that, oh, I talked to somebody and they said that? Are you 20 years later when somebody says that's kind of controversial? Now you're going to be thrown in jail. Now you're going to be fined. Now you're going to be branded a criminal for the rest of your life. And that's just the bishop. That's just publishing. We're talking about a member of parliament, 20 years, and they're trying potentially to fine her thousands of dollars or put her in jail. I mean, it is really breathtaking.
Of course, I want to be clear. Was there anything she said that in any genuine way could be construed as violent at all? Was it like, hey, we got to round up the gays and kill it? Like, but not even that. Was there anything worse than like, hey, maybe we shouldn't, be involved in a pride parade, church? Like, that's like so nothing sandwich. There has to be something more than that to be charged with a war crime.
No, it's absolutely not. It's the first time you have in one of her radio statements, she said, look, I love everybody. I want everybody is valuable. Everybody has human dignity under God, right? God has made everybody, has a plan for everybody. And then just talked about, the normal distinction that Christians share, which is that there's a difference between the sin and the sinner. And she said, we're all sinners. That's one of the fundamental things. And in fact, at the trial itself, the prosecutor started grilling her about theology, right? Just straight up violated the most basic principles of secular neutrality that you're supposed to have in front of a court, and said, well, can you really distinguish the sin and the sinner? In Christianity, isn't the sinner, saying somebody's a sinner, worse than calling them a criminal? What's the real relationship between the New Testament and the Old Testament? And the judge in this case, thankfully said, prosecutor, that is way out of line. That has nothing to do with this case. But no, it is one of these things where it's so crazy how respectful her questions are, how respectful all of her speech has been. Nothing even coming close to, even insults, right? Which should of course be, people should be free to say those, but it doesn't even come there to go after her. It's hard to believe, but it is actually really happening. And as you say, it's really happening in the US too, right? People coming after folks for just asking simple questions, just having people on, just making inelegant statements sometimes. People are now trying to get them fired, throw them off platforms, and in Finland's case, throw them in jail.
Yeah, this is the worst of all the cancel stories we've ever heard. And as we said, it's a sign of what's coming for America, no doubt. Sean, we got to run, but when are we going to get a verdict on this?
Well, the closing arguments are going to be happening in about a week and a half, February 14th. Then the verdict should come down in about 2 weeks to 4 weeks after that. However it comes out, and we're hopeful that PAIVI and the bishop will be set free, will be acquitted. If they're not, we plan to take it to the European Court of Human Rights. But a lot of this, the process is the punishment. But if you want to learn more about the case, you can go to adfinternational.org/free speech on trial.
Yeah, please do. Sean Nelson, grateful for you. Give my best to everyone at ADF International. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike.
Massive implications for here in America, right? It's bad enough we go after the guy for baking cakes. Wait till you go after they go after your pastor just for quoting the Bible. Coming up next, talking about affirmative action in the Supreme Court, and we're going to talk to an amazing woman who blew the whistle on critical race theory in a California school and then got the heck out of town to Florida. Talk with her coming up next as well. Mike Slater filling in for Buck Sexton. Hold the line. Hey, Mike Slater filling in for the great Buck Sexton. That story was incredible. Be sure to keep following that one. I can't wait for our next guest either. A woman from Jamaica blowing the whistle on critical race theory at a school here in California. As we're being told that there is no critical race theory in our schools. Wait to hear from her. She's absolutely amazing. And it's super relevant this week because of the Supreme Court pick that's going to be coming from the White House. Biden, of course, saying he will only appoint a black woman. Amazing that we're still having this debate, even after Aunt Jemima was removed from the syrup bottle. It's unbelievable. Still, we went through all the trouble of removing Uncle Ben, the Indian girl from Land O'Lakes, and Aunt Jemima, and now it's Pearl Milling Company, whatever that is. even after that historic transformational step, we still have race issues in America. What else do we need to do? Now, of course, we don't have race issues here in America, but the left needs to make sure that it sure feels like we do. Or I should say, we wouldn't have race issues if people did not make a lot of money picking at the scabs of it. Now, on the Supreme Court pick, you saw this poll the other day, ABC News, 76% of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, do not think that the pick should be based on race and or gender. And you're thinking, oh, wow, that's because we live in a white supremacist country. Well, only 28% of non-white Americans support what the president's doing by nominating only a black woman. So you got a vast majority of non-white Americans who disagree with it as well. And 100% of black Americans should be against it. Certainly 100% of black women jurists should be against it because now, unfortunately, their tenure on the court is going to have a bit of an asterisk. Oh, well, she's only there because she's a black woman, and that's unfair to her. But people knew this would happen when affirmative action started. When it was first proposed decades ago, people knew that this would be the consequence, right? And it's been an issue for a long time in colleges. Read an article the other day from the great John McWhorter. He's a Columbia University linguists professor. And he wrote an article in the New York Times called "It's Time to End Race-Based Affirmative Action." And he tells a story of when he was debating the NAACP president and a bunch of other people who were for affirmative action. He's against it. And he said, if my daughter got into every school that she applied to, but her white friend didn't, who would conclude that my daughter is disadvantaged? And he went on this thing and he said, it pains me to know that there are administrators beaming at the fact that by admitting my daughter, they're sticking their thumb in the eye of white people who don't feel guilty enough about their supremacy. They're beaming because my daughter is going to make their campus more diverse. They're beaming because by admitting my daughter, they're showing that racism is not dead. He said, I will feel that my daughter, when this happens, I will feel that my daughter is being condescended to. I will feel it as a mark of disrespect to my ability to get past the ills of the past and to pass on those abilities to my daughter. And of course, that's true from John McWhorter. He said he shudders at the thought of a college admissions officer looking at his daughter's application, finding out she's biracial, and because of the one-drop rule, determining that she is sufficiently African-American enough. And then thinking that that is the most interesting thing about her. How horrible is that? The fact that, because she's half black, half white, as John McWhorter says, back in my day, mixed, and therefore officially diverse enough. And he said, I don't want an admissions officer considering the obstacles that my children have faced, because in 2022, as opposed to 1972, they really face no more or less than their white peers do. Now, don't fall for this, of course. It's all about the money. That's what I said earlier. As long as people can profit off of picking the scabs, they will. And I'm grateful for this person for being honest, right? This ties into the other theme of the show today, which is freedom of speech. I want people to speak clearly, articulately, so that we know who they really are. We know what they stand for, and we know their motivation as well. I want to play this clip of this woman here. As you listen to her, realize that there are hundreds of administrators at every university who are in the diversity departments who are just like this woman. Literally hundreds at every university. Here she is.
Hey y'all. For those that don't know, I do anti-racism work professionally. I'm a facilitator and a consultant. In my day job, I offer political education and move resources to the larger social justice movement. And in my side hustles, I offer political education and guidance to organizations and other organizing bodies to help them unlearn white supremacy culture. When I first started doing this work, my work was very much geared towards white folks and helping white folks understand racism and just trying to change their minds. And that was fruitless. I was not enjoying myself, so I shifted my political education to center Black folks specifically and other people of color. What I expect from white folks, what white folks' anti-racism work truly is the redistribution of wealth in this country. If you are not paying reparations to Black and brown folks right now, you are not anti-racist.
Isn't that great? Give me your money. Well, you want my money? What do you do exactly? Oh, I'm a facilitator and consultant who moves resources. Moves resources from white people to Black people, or more specifically, from you to me. And Black Lives Matter as an organization is no different, right? Their leadership now left $60 million unaccounted for. $60 million as the original founders left town, and they're, who knows where they're. I mean, Patrisse Cullors, the original founder, if you want to reach her, she's probably at her home in Malibu. One of her 4 homes. One of them's in Malibu, you know, with her people, in solidarity, in Malibu. All right, let me make this last point. We need to make sure that we're not confused about this, because the left is trying to confuse us. Right? We confuse in our country competence and power. This is very important. Let me try to do this articulately and clearly. If someone is in a position of authority and earned it because they're competent, in our country today, we attack that. Because in our mind, it's just power. That man has power, therefore he's bad. But hold on, that person's also incredibly competent. So as so many people are on this crusade to destroy power, they're also destroying competence. And that's very bad. And this is very similar with Biden's Supreme Court pick, right? He promises to pick Black women. Why? Because Black women don't have power. So we're gonna elevate a Black woman to a position of power. Okay, but what about competence? What about merit? That's not allowed to be talked about because these progressives only live in a power-based world. They only think in terms of power, not competence. Quick example, have you ever wondered why Hollywood pushes weak beta males on it? So you got a bunch of soy boys in Hollywood, right? Why? Wimpy, harmless beta males in all the starring roles. Why? Because when you think competence and strength is the same as power, and if power is bad, then you tear down strength and are attracted to weakness. Does it make sense? If you think that competence and strength and power are the same, right? As you tear down power, you also tear down competence and strength, and you're left with weakness. Cool? But we want great people to be powerful. But when the left only sees everything as power, and is power bad, then they start to tear down greatness too. Think about it as a hunter-gatherer society, right? The hunting party goes out. Who do you want to put in the front? The best hunter, right? No hunter-gatherer society was like, let's find Black woman to put in front. You find the best person. You put them in the front. And we used to do that in America. But now these Black Lives Matter people, they literally call meritocracy white supremacy. That's one of their arguments, is that meritocracy in our white supremacy society, they attack like showing up on time and using proper English and all these. One of them is merit. Merit. They're attacking merit because it's their effort to attack power, and in it they tear down the great. And then what are we left with? I guess we're left with our greatest minds removing Aunt Jemima from the syrup bottle. Coming up next, a teacher who was courageous enough to blow the whistle on critical race theory, which isn't being taught. Blowing the whistle as it is being taught in her school. Got another amazing story. She's here next. Hey, Slater Crusaders, Mike Slater filling in for Buck Sexton. So grateful for our next guest. I love encouraging people who are brave enough to speak out, to blow the whistle, to tell parents what's really going on in our schools. There's way too many teachers, for whatever reason, don't speak out. So the ones who do, we are going to celebrate, especially when our schools are telling us that there is no critical race theory being taught in our schools. Kali Fontanilla. She was a teacher in Salinas, California. It's south of San Francisco, south of San Jose. She's not a teacher there anymore because she blew the whistle. Kali, how are you today?
I'm doing well. And I just want to say that there's a whole team of people behind me praying for me. It's not just me alone that's coming out with this. I have a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram who have just been so encouraging and praying for me during all of this time. They are heroes too.
Let's add to those numbers with our conversation here. So tell us what you saw from your Hispanic students when you were a teacher in
Yes.
Salinas?
First of all, I just want to make sure that we address the fact that mainstream news like CNN and MSNBC keep sending this message out that critical race theory is not in our K through 12 schools. And I feel like people are just parroting that talking point, especially those on the left. And that is a complete lie. And I know that they call themselves the honest broadcast, but they are lying to the American people that critical race theory is not in our schools. It is in many of our schools, and it was in my whole district. It was actually in the full curriculum. So I just want to make sure that America knows that critical race theory is in our schools. It's explicitly and implicitly taught, and it's becoming more and more prominent.
You took pictures of slides. So if I may, you took pictures of slides that literally say in giant bold letters at the top, critical race theory. And if I may interject, one of my favorite stories of yours is when you asked officially for these documents, they sent you documents of the curriculum and they took out all those slides.
Yes, that was actually my friend Kelly. She's a parent advocate. She contacted a lawyer to get the documents from the district. And yes, they took out the critical race theory slides. Luckily, I shared the same platform as the teacher that was teaching the ethnic studies course, which was required for all ninth grade students. They did not have the option to not take this course. And I shared the same platform as that teacher, and she had her lessons as public to all the teachers at our district. And I was able to see the lessons that had the critical race theory explicitly taught. But that is now that the left is wising up to the fact that we're finding this in our classrooms, they are starting to hide it more. But I was very blessed to be able to actually see the real lessons with critical race theory in bold. They actually had the students analyze school policy through critical race theory.
What was your main concern with these lessons?
Well, for one, I teach the English language I taught the English language learners, and they were really struggling in the class. And I didn't know very much about it. It was a new course that was being introduced in our district. They were actually going ahead of Gavin Newsom's order to require ethnic studies, which is going to have critical race theory, ethnic studies for all California students. And my district decided to go ahead of that order and make it a requirement for graduation. And all of our ninth grade students were required to take it in the 2021 school year. And I noticed a pattern that my English learners were failing that course. It was probably I have my students do grade checks every week, especially we were in a pandemic. We had to teach online, and they shut down our schools, and my students were struggling for one. And I was noticing that they were struggling a lot in the ethnic studies course. I saw a lot of Fs, especially from the boys. And so I would ask them, what's going on with your ethnic studies class? And I'd have some of my boys say that class is so dumb. Why do we have to take this class? And so I actually was able to look at the lessons, and it's pretty much, I would say, what's happening in our colleges where it's all this left-leaning teachings that are happening in our colleges. Now they're bringing it to our ninth grade students.
It's everything. We've talked about critical race theory for years now, and everyone I think knows what it is. But the fact that they're, as you said, teaching it younger and younger and younger, is horrific.
Absolutely.
Now, what's fascinating is these are mostly Hispanic kids, right?
Yes.
Who you notice were failing.
Yes.
And my understanding was that ethnic studies was mostly directed at white kids for understanding how terrible and horrible they are. And you would think, I think progressives would have thought that Hispanics would thrive in this course.
Yeah, I mean, well, for one, it was being taught online, and we know how well online teaching is for our students. It's not very good. And secondly, the white students that they can't speak up, even if the few white students that are in the district, they can't speak up if they didn't enjoy the class, because they would be called white supremacists or racists or whatever. And then also, it's just a complete waste of time. Our students felt like it was a waste of time. We have a literacy crisis in America. Why are we having our kids do privilege quizzes? Why are we teaching them about Marxism? They can get that in their left-leaning colleges. Why does it need to go into our high school with our high school students? Why are they teaching them about the 4 I's of oppression and decolonization? When we have an average reading level of around 5th or 6th grade in America, it's ridiculous.
And it's worse than a waste of time. You had a great line. You said, whenever there's hyper-race focus, racism will follow. And I did a little Google search of the Salinas High School. And the first story that popped up was about Hispanic kids taking a doll of like a black doll and punching it and kicking it and running over it with a car and everything. And you're like, oh, well, of course, all you're doing is teaching these kids that we're different from each other, right?
Well, that district actually had more focus on Black History Month than on Hispanic Heritage Month. You know, and I do believe that this does cause, teenagers are rebellious. And so when you're shoving this stuff down their throats, which is the best way to describe it, like you take this class and you better admit that you have some implicit bias or whatever, they're going to rebel against it. And I believe that incident that happened in our district is because there's such a hyper race focus in my district, you know, in my former district.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I want to get to that. I was watching one of your videos and you showed a care package or something that the administration gave you with all this like Black Lives Matter stuff. Like how offensive the assumption is that because you're Black, you believe all these other things and you would like a Black Power sticker and all this stuff.
Yeah, it was actually, I got an email from the superintendent that a group of parents had assembled a gift for the Black teachers. And it was to comfort us during the George Floyd. Okay. And what was so insulting to me about it is, for one, I want to be honored as my merit as a teacher, not for my skin color. And it's not like they're going to give all the white teachers a gift after Waukesha, you know, when there was a Black supremacist that mowed down white people because he was angry. You know, it was just, and then the gift was just so pandering. It was a Black idolatry gift. That's what I call it. You know, I love being Black sticker, a Black Educators Matter mask. It had a I love being Black pin. It had a letter in it that says, I greet you, and the African greeting of Otep, which means that the God in me acknowledges the God in you. I mean, I'm a Christian conservative. I hear you having a African God greet me, you know, and then the thing is, this is the real problem with that gift, is if I reject it, then I get treated with racism. Then I get treated terribly. I actually exposed that gift online, and I had no idea that video was going to go viral. And the comments that I got on that were just, you hate yourself. You don't want to be Black. You think you're white. You're still a slave. Not all slaves are free. Just horrible, horrible comments, because I didn't accept this pandering gift that was only given to Black teachers. So it was a trap. Really all of this is making it's breaking my heart.
Well, yeah, I got 30 seconds, Kali. You moved to Florida. Yes. I'm still in California. What's the move been like for you? How is it different?
I feel like I moved to America. I did not know that I was in America in California, and we now have two Americas right now. And I just want to say that everyone who's fighting for their freedom right now and who's speaking up about critical race theory, or speaking up about the fact that our students were being forced to wear masks all day long while we can have packed Super Bowl stadiums, or who are praying for those that are on the front lines, who are, losing their jobs. You guys are heroes, and we need to keep standing up for this stuff, because they're never going to stop, and we can't get sleepy on critical race theory. And don't let this be a trending topic, because they are not going to let it go. And I'm actually opening my own online school. It's going to be fully accredited. It's called Exodus Institute. It's for parents who want an option to pull their child from public school, but may not necessarily want to be their child's teacher. But then I'm also going to be offering supplemental lessons for parents that can't pull their child from public school, but want to have lessons that counter some of this indoctrination that's happening to their child.
Beautiful. And beautiful. Love it. Where we got to run, Kali, but where can people follow you and get all that?
They can look up my school at thinkexodus.org, and they can also follow me at Kali Fontanilla. If they look up my name, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on TikTok, and I will be on Truth Social when that comes out.
Beautiful. Kali, you're wonderful. Yeah. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Well done. Quick hits coming up next. Hold the line. Thank you to Buck Sexton for letting me fill in. Now it's time for our quick hits. In Hong Kong, which is now China, they're killing all the hamsters. This kid, he had to kill his pet hamster Marshmallow because a guy who works at a pet store got COVID, and the hamsters may all have it. So everyone's killing all the hamsters. Now, I don't know if you know this, but commies hate animals. They always have. There's a part of the Great Leap Forward back in the 60s in China was the 4 Pests campaign. And the communists killed mosquitoes for malaria, rodents for the plague, flies because they're annoying, but also the Eurasian tree sparrow, because the cute little adorable bird ate 4 pounds of grain every year, each bird. And there was no food because the communists screwed up the farming. So they went around and they killed all the sparrows. They broke their eggs. They stepped on the chicks. They would get in groups and bang pots and pans underneath trees so that the birds couldn't rest, and they would fall out of the sky of exhaustion and just kill them. Isn't that amazing? They almost made the poor bird extinct. And when they did that, because they didn't want the birds to eat their food anymore, right? But when they did that, the bug population went through the roof, especially the locusts. And the locusts ended up eating more crops than even the birds ever ate. Stupid commies. Story number 2, do not get me started on masks in school. It's horrific. To force kids to wear masks to protect adults is an inversion of nature. It's a moral crime for the ages, and we're living in the midst of it right now. It's horrible. And I hate when parents are like, oh, you know, my kids don't care. They don't seem to mind. No, they don't know any better. They're children. You do know better. Watch this video from a baby's cartoon show and the indoctrination, the propaganda they're pushing on your kids.
Put on your mask, put on your mask, put on your mask. What if my friends don't wear masks?
Just remind them and stay 6 feet away.
Put on your M-A-S-K.
Oh, make it stop. Make it stop. Stop it, make it stop. No more. It's 3 minutes of that. Put on your mask, unless of course you're Gavin Newsom or the mayor of LA or the mayor of San Francisco, and you happen to be around the most famous immunocompromised person in the country, Magic Johnson, then you don't have to because you are better than us. If you're the governor of California, you are morally righteous and superior in every way, so you're exempt from the mandates that you impose on the children. But the rest of us need to continue to always wear our masks. Third story, San Diego, these guys stole a car and then rammed it through a jewelry store in the middle of the night and took axes to the cases and stole a bunch of jewelry. But if you look at the security camera footage from inside the store, you look at one of the robbers here, my man, didn't you watch Baby Joy video? Don't you know the importance of proper mask wearing? Good night, man. You have to have that surgical mask covering your mouth and your nose. Otherwise, aerosols can come out through your nose, where they often collect, and it's not safe for the people around you. Come on, man. Be safe. Be smart. We're all in this together. Can't you see a Karen walking down the sidewalk and be like, hey, man, put your mask on, all right? Also, another thing. I can see your whole face, you idiot. If there was ever a place to wear a surgical mask properly, it's when you're robbing a jewelry store. Although maybe we need the CDC to issue some proper guidance on that. I don't know what to do. On Saturday at 9 o'clock Eastern, I got a special that we have for you on the book of Genesis, getting back to basics. You think this country's screwed up? We got to get back to the basics. Where do we go to? In the beginning, Genesis 1:1. That's what our special is all about. It's this Saturday at 9 o'clock Eastern. Mike Slater filling in for Buck Sexton. Shields high.